So this episode is going to be all about all the upgrades I've had to do to this truck to keep it a reliable truck, but still be able to do a good amount of off-roading with it. So I'm not jacking this thing up, 6, 7, 8 inches, and I'm not putting 35-inch tires on it. And I'm going to explain the reasons why I did all this stuff and why I kept it to a certain size, because you want to keep these vehicles reliable on the road. I want to get 300,000 miles out of this truck. So I'm going to explain all the pieces I added to it and why this matters to keep it a reliable truck. So let's get started. So there's a million lift kits you can buy for your Toyota Tacoma. You can get 3-inch, 2-inch, 1-inch, 6-inch, 8-inch. There's a tons of other options out there, and I'm gonna explain the reason why I did this. I put a puck kit in, and I know a lot of people don't like the puck kits because they say they're cheap and they're not as a real lift kit, but in all reality you get 2 inches of a lift out of this puck kit. So you do get a good, a decent amount of lift out of it. It doesn't increase your roughness of your ride by that much. It does a little bit, and the reason why it does a little bit, you are changing your angle of your upper and lower control arms a little bit. So you do get a little bit of a rougher ride. It's not that significant though, if you're only going a 2-inch lift kit. So that's why a 2-inch is just fine for this. Now let me show you why I went with a 2-inch lift kit on the puck kit. And don't get me wrong, you can go with the spring and everything else, the more expensive kits, but the benefit that you're going to get out of it is very minor compared to this when you're going with a 2-inch lift kit. If you're going anything more, then yeah, you're going to benefit a lot. But again, if you're going anything more like a 6-inch lift kit, then your ride suspension is not going to be really great for driving, and getting 200, 300,000 miles on the road. So that's why I went with this. So let's show you the other part. So this is the main reason why I went with a 2-inch lift kit. You can see my CV axle right here. Even with a 2-inch lift kit, that axle is not at an extreme downward bind. So it's pretty level. And pretty level means that it's going to drive good. It's going to get good mileage out of it. If you start putting a 6-inch lift kit, then this axle right here is going to be at down angle really hard, and you start getting binding in your bearings on the front and the rear of your CV axles. So if you want to build a vehicle that gets a lot of mileage, you really can't go over 3-inch is the borderline. 2-inch is what I recommend. And like I said, 2-inch, you can get a lot of use out of a 2-inch lift kit. Now on the rear of the truck, there's two options really. You can get a extra leaf kit that'll give you a lift, or you can get a block kit. I went with the block kit because when you start doing the added leaf kit, you are stiffening your suspension in your rear. It's going to get stiffer. When you do the block kit, you're not going to get a stiffer suspension. Now, you cannot go over 2 inches with the block kit. At least that's my recommendation, because once you start going over 2 inches of this height, you start getting this shudder in your rear end. So when you hit the brakes really hard, your rear end is going to shift like this because it's got a lot of distance here. So a 2-inch is just fine. 1 inch is really easy, but 1 or 2 inch is just fine for a block kit. Anything higher, you do have to do the leaf kits because you'll start getting shudder in your rear end because of the chattering back and forth from your rear end when you hit the brakes hard. Another thing is, when you add a lift in your rear, and like I said, mine goes 2 inches, you need suspension shocks, because now you have a 2 inches of extra down travel on it, and you need to make sure that this down travel can happen in your shock. So make sure you get a shock that can handle that extra 2 inches. What I ended up doing is I bought these. I want to say they allow for 2 to 5 inches of extra travel, and I like that option because then it will definitely allow me that entire range of travel. You know, it's guaranteeing that when I'm off-roading, I get a lot of travel in my rear end. And we know these Tacomas, they have really good travel suspension in the rear. So that's why I got the extra long shocks in the rear. And it does help. It helps a ton. Now, like I said, you can add the leaf spring kit to the back. It's not an issue there. It just, that was my preference to put the 2-inch block kit in, because it doesn't really change the ride quality of the truck. So since we're talking about reliability, let's talk about tires. So you shouldn't get 35-inch tires on a truck if you want it to be reliable. You're gonna start putting a lot of wear and tear. You gotta change a lot of factors in your suspension, because when you go 35s, you gotta do cab mount chop, you got to get a new upper control arm, I even think you got to get different rims. There's a lot of options you have to change, you know, and you got to put a bigger lift than a 2-inch lift kit on it. It's going to take your truck from a reliable truck to not so reliable truck. You're not going to get that high mileage out of it. So that's why I suggest getting the 265/75 R16. I know I'm going to get a lot of comments on this, but if you're going to do a lot of off-roading, get the mud terrain tire, because the mud terrain tire has nice big thick knobby knobs on it, and you're going to get really good traction out in the mud, and you know, the terrain, you know, self-explanatory. I love these tires. These are the Cooper Evolution M&T, and I just love them. They're a 10-ply tire. They're tough. They're 32 inches tall because of the 265/75. They're just a really good tire. Another thing I really like about them is, like I said, this video is about off-roading and reliability. And these tires get great mileage. And out of a mud terrain tire to get great mileage is unheard of. And these ones get it. I already have almost 20,000 miles on this truck. And you can see my tread wear is maybe 30% down, so I think I'll probably get like 45,000 before the tread wear gets low enough that I'll need to change them out. So I'm predicting about 45,000 miles. Now another thing too is, you're going off-roading, you need to be gentle off-roading, because you don't want to mess that alignment up. You mess your alignment up, then your tires are not going to wear evenly. So when you go to a bump and a rock or something, be gentle to it, you know. You still have to give some momentum to certain things, but take it easy out there. You want to keep that alignment as good as possible. So let's talk about protecting your truck when you're going off-roading now. Now, I bought the aluminum skid plate for the front. It's nice and super thick. It takes a good beating. The Toyota TRD Off-Road came with the steel protection plate in the front before, and I don't like it. It's paper thin. It's not going to do what I need it to do, which is protect me from rocks and stuff. So that's why I went with the solid, real thick aluminum one. Now, the aluminum one weighs super light, and weight on these Toyota Tacomas is your enemy. So you want to make sure you're not adding a ton of weight to your Tacoma, because you know these Tacomas have a low payload capacity already, and we start adding a ton of metal to it, it's going to even lower it down a lot more. So that's why I say on a Tacoma you need those aluminum skid plates, because you're not going to want to add a ton of weight to that truck. So back here by the transfer case and by the transmission, I got another skid plate back here. Again, this is aluminum, so it's pretty lightweight, but again, you need protection back here also to make sure you don't tear up stuff when you're going off-roading. So there are two skid plate items you need to buy that will be steel. One is the rock slider that'll keep your rockers from being damaged when you're off-roading. Now, if you're not a serious off-roader, you know, you're doing minor off-roading, you don't need to buy this. These trucks have tons of clearance already, so if you're not going extreme off-roading, you don't need to buy this thing. But if you are going to be going pretty extreme off-roading, then this is going to save your rocker. Now the second item is a skid plate for your rear differential. The reason why you need this being made of metal, of solid steel and thick steel, is because you don't have a lot of deflection thickness here. You are going to be right against your pumpkin, and You got a little extra protection for your U-joint up here. You really need a steel one for this because of the protection you're doing for this area. And I love these, not just because it's an extra skid plate, but this actually does a great job of skidding. So you see right down there, if you catch a rock along your pumpkin right here, it's just going to skid right across. It's not going to catch your differential and jam you solid and stop you. It's going to do a nice job of skidding right across it. Love the skid plate. I tested this thing and it works. I just love it. I've hit these rocks, and when they skid across, you can kind of feel it just go and it just skids across instead of jamming. Love it. So if you're going to be going through any kind of water that's deeper than 18 inches, then you need this. This is a breather extension tube. It takes your rear differential. It runs a tube all the way up, and I'll show you where I got it coming out at. What I ended up doing was I just drilled a hole in my plastic right here inside the gas tank area, and not the gas tank of course, but this little exposed area right here, and I just hooked your breather spinner up here. That way I have plenty of depth. I'm never going to go to the water this deep, never, or the truck will be dead. But this makes sure that the differential tube is not going to suck water into it from way up here. Now, me personally, I would buy a hitch for two reasons. One, it's a truck. You need a rear hitch on it. Two, that bar going across and this part right here is a great low point for keeping you from bottoming out and tearing up your bumper. Now, if you start going through deeper water, you need some kind of snorkel. And the one I'm going to build, and I'll build this later on, I got all the parts, and on a future video I'll show you the parts I'm going to get for it. It's a tube that goes from your air breather here, and it's going to go into my cowl right here. It'll have a down cover on it like this. That way any water coming in from the cowl won't ever splash into it. I'm going to seal the bottom tube on this so water won't go that way, and that'll basically raise my water level to right about here. Now, of course, I won't go that high, but it's just a safety net to make sure I don't kill the engine. So there's a lot of options for this, but a front camera is something I say you kind of need when you're going off-roading, because these hoods are really tall and you can't see anything over them. If you're going down a ravine or something, you just think you're going off a cliff. You can't see anything. It really freaks you out. So, like I said, there's many options for front cameras. Some people do the drill and they put a little built-in camera here. I did the GoPro one because that way I'm cheap. I don't have to install an entire kit and take apart the dash and do things there. What this is just a stick-on GoPro mount, and when I'm done with the truck I can just take it off. It won't hurt the paint any, and when I go off-roading I just hook the GoPro right there, and then my tablet, I can see everything from the front of the truck on it. I just click it to the dash and we're all set. I can see everything from the front, and I just love it. Now, a neat thing also is the GoPro mounts here, and I put this red tape on the bumper right here, and I got another one over here. What that tape's for is my camera that I'm seeing from the inside can view down and see the red tape, so it sees the bumper, and then that's where my tire is. So I know exactly where my front tires are by looking at the camera. So I'm driving along, I'm hitting a rock bed, and I want to see, I got to put my tires on those rocks. From the camera I can see real quickly, I can just glance over, I see the red, I see the rock coming up, I aim the red to the rock, and I'm all good. It just works. So love this. Put a little piece of tape on your upper, and like I said, it doesn't hurt the truck. You just take the tape off when you're ready to sell the truck, and you're all good. And it kind of looks cool when it's on there anyway. So this is an item I'm going to disagree with the crowd on. You don't need a locker in your rear truck. You don't need a locker, even in the front. It's not a necessity unless you're doing extreme off-roading, which in that case you need the 35-inch tires. You need, a lot more built up into your trucks. But if you're just going a 33, 32-inch tire at the most and a 2-inch lift kit, you don't need a locker. Now, I have the TRD off-road and it came with a rear locker. It's kind of nice sometimes. Almost all the time you don't need it, but there are cases where it's kind of nice when you're going through a rock garden and you're kind of bouncing back and forth. It's kind of nice to have a locker because then you get a little extra traction during certain things. So there are cases where a locker is nice, but is it necessary? No, it's not a necessity item. And last but not least is gear. So you need good recovery gear. Now there's two different types of recovery gear. There's I'm going out without a buddy recovery gear, and there's I'm going out with a buddy recovery gear. Now I'm going out with a buddy is a snatch rope. What these do is they actually flex, they stretch a little bit, and it compounds that weight, and it gives a lot more pull on the truck, but it's a nice even pull. It's like somebody yanking on a rope, but you're super strong. So love these for having someone yank you out. You only need one of these. You get two and it kind of counters the effect of what you're doing. So only get one of these. If you need any more length in your rope, you get a tow rope. These do not stretch, but if you combine this with this, you get the stretch and then you get the length of the pull combined together. Now, if you're combining any rope to another rope, that's in between the trucks. You don't put metal here. You don't put one of these here, because if, I know this isn't going to break, but if a rope breaks or something breaks in between, you have a ton of pressure and this thing is going to fly at somebody going high miles per hour. It's going to kill someone. So do not put metal in the middle. Take a snatch rope and you pull these out, pop that open through there, put that through there, and then these are rated at 12,000 pounds, so it's got a ton of weight, and that's it. Now another thing is if you are going off-roading and you don't have a buddy, you know, it happens once in a while, come along. So I know you can put a winch on your truck, and there's a lot of other options to do things, but if you just want to do something cheap, this is like 50 bucks, 60 bucks I think they are, 50 or 60. This is a nice cheap way to get yourself out of a jam. This thing is rated, when you double it back to the hook, at 4,000 pounds. This should get you out of a jam. So now you need tire repair. Just a cheap tire repair kit. Get yourself a nice, you know, decent pump, but not expensive pump. I found this one on Harbor Freight to Pittsburgh. Very reliable. It's not too expensive. And that's pretty much it for your tires. Just get a nice tire repair kit and a pump. Because also, you know, you may have to air it down when you're out there to get unstuck. You got to air it back up somehow. Your recovery gear, if you have a hitch like I do, and I suggest you get a hitch, you don't have to have one, but this goes into your hitch and it gives you a nice recovery point on the rear of your truck. Nice strong recovery point. And I say have two of the soft shackles, because there's other cases where you're extending or you need to hook up to something. Having two of these is really, really nice. So that is everything I did to the Toyota Tacoma. That gave me a nice off-road vehicle that I can go off and do great trails. I can climb over, you know, 20-inch, 25-inch rocks. 25's pushing it, but it can do it. And, you know, you can do a lot of off-roading with this capability. And like I said, I didn't have to spend a ton of money into it, and it did not take away the reliability of the truck. Because I put 32-inch tires on it, I'm not putting a ton of strain on my CV axles, on my differential, on my rear differential. So smaller tires, 32 inches and small, but you know, it's big enough. And this keeps your truck from getting too much strain on it. And that's the idea. You keep it to a factory level of strain and you keep it reliable. So that's it. And if you like what we're doing, please subscribe and we'll see you next episode.